If you are looking for some recipe inspiration, some healthy, easy to make meals for yourself, your family, your partner, then stick around. I'm going to share with you some of my favorite recipes that I cooked up this week for lunches and dinners. So let's go. So we're hopping straight into the recipes this week, and we're going to start with hash browns, which I love doing on the weekend, or like a lunch for breakfast or breakfast for lunch, or whatever you prefer. So it's very simple. You don't need a lot of ingredients for this, and you want to start by obviously washing your potatoes and then grating them. I normally leave the peel on for recipes like this, but you can obviously peel them if you prefer as well. And once you have peeled your 2 potatoes for this recipe, I rinse them off to get some of the starch off the potatoes. You don't have to do this step, but I prefer doing it this way. The one mistake I made with this recipe is I didn't wring them out quite tightly enough. You'll see me kind of getting rid of any extra liquid here, but I'd probably recommend to really wring them out in a cloth or something like that. But this is sort of what you end up with your 2 potatoes, and then you want to cut up some onion. Again, the recipe to this will be linked below. I'm going a bit lighter on the onion at the moment, just for dietary reasons. So yeah, just cutting up the onion. And I thought I'd leave this clip in here because I often get the question from you guys how I actually cut up onion. And this is my little trick. If you've got another way of doing it, feel free to leave a comment or a link below. But I find that this way you get fairly small little cubes every single time, which is quite nice. And now we are going to add that onion obviously to the bowl, to the potatoes. And I forgot to show you, but I cracked 1 egg into this bowl as well, 1 large egg. And then I'm going to add my flour. And I just add a little sprinkle just to help them tie together. I have tried this with gluten-free flour, corn flour, and regular flour. So whatever you have on hand in your pantry is obviously perfect for this recipe. And then I'm just adding some salt and pepper. If you like a little bit of a kick, you can actually add a little bit of chili or something like that. Works really well for this recipe as well. But just mix that up really well and make sure that the flour and the egg is sort of all combined. Now this did turn out a bit more liquidy than it was meant to, but I've learnt for next time to really wring those potatoes out a little bit more tightly. And I could have possibly added a sprinkle more flour just to really bind everything together. Then you want to have a fairly hot pan with some oil in it, and like you can see here, I was struggling with a bit of extra liquid, but you end up with a thing that looks kind of like that, and they still turned out really, really, really tasty. So you just want to kind of shape them a little bit in your pan and make sure the pan is fairly hot, and don't go too stingy on the oil even if you're trying to be healthy here, because you don't want to like burn them too much. So I cooked them a couple of minutes on each side. I think it ended up about 3 minutes or so, but I'll link the original recipe that I based this on. And then you just want to make sure that they cook through properly. So around this point I put a lid on my pan and I started to do my eggs on the side because we were having this for a weekend breakfast. And this is how I served it. It turned out really, really tasty. You can have it with some barbecue sauce or something like that, but I really recommend trying this if you haven't. So I personally really love tuna because it's a very versatile thing, but I think tuna on its own can be a little bit dry. So what I do when I have tuna in a salad is that I mix it up with some Greek yogurt, some Dijon mustard, and some lemon juice. Obviously any spices that you prefer to use as well, and you can use fresh lemon or bottled lemon juice, which I often tend to have in my fridge. So the easiest way to do this is to put about 2 tablespoons of Greek yogurt in with a large can of tuna, some seasoning of your choice, some Dijon mustard, and that's basically it. And here are some of the other ingredients I put in this particular salad. I had some bits and bobs in my fridge that needed to be used up in addition to what I bought for the grocery haul, and you've got the lettuce there on the side. And it's really interesting, I find it, because when you mix a tuna up like this, it's really creamy, and you can batch prepare the mixture there that I showed you and keep in the fridge for a few days. And if you don't want to eat the same thing for days on end, I actually varied the very same tuna mixture into this one, which was avocado, corn, carrot, some lettuce, and it's really nice because you don't need an additional dressing with it. So I highly recommend to try it if you haven't already. So who doesn't love potato salad? Well, I definitely do. And it's a very simple thing that you can make with just a couple of ingredients that most people will have at home. So how I do potato salad is I will have the potato of my choice. I will cut it into fairly small pieces and boil them. It means that they boil a lot quicker and they also get a lot less mushy. It's a lot easier to cut them this way. So you want to make sure that you let them cool really properly, and then you mix it in with a couple of tablespoons of Greek yogurt in this case. I put some boiled eggs that I'd cut pretty small. I think I had 2 teaspoons of Dijon mustard, some pickles, some onion of your choice if you like that, and any seasonings that you like. You usually need a fair bit of salt when you're serving potato salad. And then gently mix it up, because otherwise you're going to end up with some kind of weird mashed potato thing, which is probably not what you were after if you wanted a salad. So I normally just gently kind of fold that together and stir it up and serve it as a side, both wintertime and summertime. And we served it this week on the side of some chicken thigh fillets that we did on the barbecue. You can obviously do them in the pan as well. Really inexpensive and super tasty, and it's one of my partner's absolute favorite sides. All right, so let's dive into the taco bowls. I've talked about them a lot. It's one of my favorite recipes. It's really simple. The ingredients you need for this are on the screen here. I'm also going to be adding some corn. Whether you like frozen or canned corn is fine. And I'm also going to do an optional sort of guacamole on the side, which is definitely optional. And if you're on a budget, you can obviously leave that one out. But we're going to get started with our homemade salsa. And the thing I really like about this is that there is no added sugar other than obviously what's already in the tomatoes. These are really sweet, juicy tomatoes as well, so I really quite like this. So you just cut up your tomatoes in whatever sizes you like them. You want to start doing this step first, by the way, as well, because the salsa just sits in the fridge and gets all flavorful and beautiful. So you want to put your onion in as well. Again, this recipe will be linked below. And then we're going to grab our lemon and we're going to get the zest off, because we're going to use the zest from the lemon to boil our rice with. So you just want to make sure that you get that off, and then we're going to use the lemon itself and get some beautiful juice for our homemade salsa. So I've actually got gifted this little juice press from Paul's mum. Thank you, Rhonda, if you're watching this video. It is really handy. I use it all the time. You can obviously just squeeze the juice with a fork or whatever straight into the thing. Put a little bit of salt in, and I also do sometimes put in a little bit of chili or something like that, just for a little bit of a kick, but it's totally up to you what you prefer. You can also put jalapenos in and other things like that. I didn't have any at home for this particular recipe. And so that's really nice. And now that you've got that mixed up, you want to get your rice boiling. So however you cook your rice, just add the lemon zest to your rice. I didn't catch this on the video camera, but I'm sure you know how to cook rice, and just add some lemon or lime zest. And with a guacamole, I just make it with a couple of simple ingredients: salt and pepper, some seasoning, some avocado, lemon juice, and I think that is a little wedge of lime I had in the fridge. And just mush it up to whatever texture you like. You can also add some sour cream or other things if you like, but I just kept it pretty healthy and simple. Moving right along, we're going to get started with meat now that we've got the other two dips sort of sorted and sitting in the fridge. So I got some turkey mince on clearance, and unfortunately they were all out of taco seasoning at my Aldi, but I thought burrito seasoning will do. It's got some beautiful flavors which will go really well with this dish. So I've got my rice boiling there in the background. I make this with brown rice, but we've had it with white rice too. It goes really well with whatever your preference is. And then we're just going to get the turkey mince cooking. Make sure that you've got a little bit of oil or whatever you prefer to cook with in the pan. I've actually started experimenting since this video with cooking a little bit less or without oil in some instances, which is obviously nice and healthy as well. But you want to just get your meat cooking. And I don't know with you, but I find sometimes with turkey, because it's a very lean meat, it doesn't always have a lot of liquid in it. So every now and then, especially after I add the seasoning, I will add, or you will see me add a little bit of water, just because it's one of those things that, you don't want it too dry. And I find that if you let it simmer just with some liquid, you do get much more beautiful flavors, and it kind of goes all the way through. And then you just let that cook for as long as it looks like it needs to. I normally let it get to about this point. I'll show you in just a second. And then you can obviously turn the heat right down or off and pop a lid on it. And these are the sides we're going to have. So I've grated up some of the cheese block you saw at the start. We've got the guacamole, and I've got some corn. This is frozen corn that I've just warmed up a little bit in the microwave. And here is the finished result. It is such a tasty, nice meal. We normally serve it with a little bit of Greek yogurt instead of sour cream, but you can obviously use whatever you prefer. But it is such an easy thing to prep, and if you were to put this in meal prep containers, just make sure your salsa is kept separately. And our final recipe for this week is the oven roasted vegetables. We quite often have this as a side. This week we had it as a side on the chicken thigh fillets that I bought that you might have seen in my previous grocery haul video. But this week I had zucchini, sweet potato and carrots for our vegetables, and I cut them up, peeled them and cut them up in about the same sort of size pieces. And the seasonings that I went for this week were rosemary, garlic salt, thyme and some onion powder along with some olive oil. And I've experimented a lot with this over the years, but I've found that if you really want the best seasoning, I find that rather than trying to put it on top of the vegetables inside before you put them in the oven, I normally simply put them in a little bowl, or you'll see here a very large bowl. So I've just put some olive oil in here along with about a teaspoon of each of the things that I showed you. You can vary this to your heart's content. You can even put fresh herbs in here as well. But the great thing is if you toss your vegetables in a bowl before you put them on the pan, they actually get really nice and coated and the seasoning spread evenly, and you don't get all that grease on your pan itself. So I just cooked these up in the oven. I find that veggies of this size normally need about half an hour, 25 to 35 minutes depending on your oven. I've got a fan forced one, and I normally put one tray at the top and one at the bottom and then kind of rotate them halfway through. You don't want to overcrowd it because then your vegetables are going to get really soggy, which isn't very nice. But it turned out really, really nice, and it's a really good side to have. And like I said, you could do this with broccoli, you could do it with any type of vegetable you want. We do this all the time, and it heats up really nicely as well. So just one thing, I guess, you want to make sure that your vegetables aren't overcooked in the oven, because if you are meal prepping, you're obviously going to run them in the microwave or heat them up in some way for about a minute or two, when they'll keep cooking. So this is one that's really good, healthy, and super budget friendly. So thanks for joining me. I hope you found that really inspiring and that you found at least one or two recipes that you're keen to try if you haven't made it yourself. One recipe that I will modify a little bit next time is the hash browns. They turned out really beautiful and tasty, but I did notice that there was a little bit too much liquid in the potatoes. So I probably will remove a little bit more liquid or wring them out a little bit more tightly next time before I mix up my hash brown mix, because it will make it a little bit easier to shape them in the pan. But other than that, we did love all of the meals this week, especially the taco bowls as a favorite of ours. And my goal is for you to take inspiration and use these recipes either as they are or change them up to your liking, because in the end of the day, cooking should be fun. I never used to love cooking, so if you would have asked me 5 years ago that if I'd be doing cooking videos on YouTube, I would have laughed at you. But there you go. If I can do it, you can certainly do it as well. I would love to have you as a subscriber in the channel, so hit the little subscribe button below if you haven't already. It really helps out my channel. If you like this type of content, feel free to give this video a big thumbs up. It's super helpful. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Have an amazing week.